Hello and welcome to another lesson on soundproofing and room acoustics. Today you guys are in for a little treat. This is kind of a unique studio where we designed a sound isolated and acoustically treated room for one of my clients so he could practice saxophone and play saxophone at any hour of the day without disturbing his family. And we also made it so it sounded really big and beautiful in a smaller space using a lot of diffusion and specific placement of acoustic panels. So if you're interested in learning how we did this and learning more about soundproofing and room acoustics, definitely stick around. Let's dive into this lesson on how we built the ultimate saxophone practice room for our client. All right, let's dive in. All right, so here's the SketchUp model of the room. This is a partial design. We do this a lot now with certain clients where they're building like a full house, or they have in this case, they had a full architecture firm working with them, and they hired us as a supplementary architecture firm to design just the studio here. So you can see from the inside, I'm kind of showing you guys just a look through the glass door here. On the outside, you can see the cool aspect of the studio. So we're going to dive into it more. You can also see some of the renders that I'll show you right here that show the beautiful finished studio with all the lighting and all the cool stuff as well. So we'll start out with just the basic floor plan here so you can see the general layout of the room. So we've got, the recording studio desk, a nice place to put his saxophone, store some things, and a full upright piano over here. Now this is a pretty small space. We're talking about roughly, from wall to wall, about 7 feet 11 inches wide. And then on the length side of things, we're looking at 17 feet 2 inches. So not the biggest room in the world, but this is what we had to work with. And this is really common in the home music studio. I'm going to call this a recording studio, but it's really like a music room market where we don't have the biggest spaces. And here you can see a little bit of the space there. And if I throw the acoustics on, you can see some of those acoustics as well. We did a lot of diffusion. I'll get to that in a second about that. But let's go back here and talk a little bit more about the design of the walls and everything. So I'm actually going to put it in perspective view. And this is kind of a cool design because we had these concrete walls as our exterior walls. This is a partial exterior wall, and then it becomes an interior wall. And what I always like to do, a lot of people say, oh, Wilson, I have a concrete wall, I don't need to do anything. And I'm like, not so fast. We still need decoupling, and we need to have an air gap there. So there's a 1-inch air gap. We used a metal stud. So this is a 2x4 metal stud. And then right here, you guys can see the sway bracing clip. Let me break this down for you a little bit better here. So I'm going to open up some of my tags here. We got the wall. This is the east wall. And then let's take off the drywall and the OSB and the insulation here, and we can kind of see how our wall is built. So we've got this sway bracing. This is an Genie Clip LB. The ISO store sells this. It's the best one on the market in my opinion, and this guy is every 48 inches on center, we put one of these just to help with the swaying of this wall since it's not actually attached to our ceiling. So this wall always is going to be a 1/4 inch below our finished ceiling. Now I say that again, the finished ceiling, which is kind of crazy, and we'll talk about the ceiling in a second. But then what we do is we got our typical metal framed wall here, and we're just going to put on our first layer of we're going to put insulation in, just pink bat insulation. Doesn't need to be rock wool. It doesn't have to. It doesn't make a difference in the sound isolation. I know, that's not what you've heard. And then we put on our OSB. So I like to do 3/4 inch OSB as my first layer over top of everything on both the walls and the ceilings. And the reason for that is to hang acoustic panels, make the second layer of drywall easier to hang, all the good stuff. And then we do our final layer of 5/8 inch drywall on top of that. Now you might be wondering, what in the world is this blue stuff? This represents backer rod and acoustic sealant that will seal the wall and the ceiling, and we do that as well below our floor here. So take out the flooring, you can see there's backer rod and acoustic sealant there as well, and that's going to show that we don't want our drywall to touch the actual cement flooring. We want it to have a 1/4 inch gap filled with usually 3/8 inch backer rod and acoustic sealant, and you'll be good to go there. And that goes all the way around on the top and the bottom of our system here. And as you can see, this is kind of a cool detail. You see how this zigzags? This is called keying. And so you want to install your layers one layer at a time when you're doing your walls. But let's talk about the ceiling, because you're probably wondering, what in the world did I do with my ceiling? So we've got our HVAC system here coming through, and then we also have, pull this up a little bit, our ceiling layers, which is going to be actually one layer of OSB and then 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall. And that is going to float above our finished wall. So let me show you this wall again here. So we take out the drywall, the framing, the OSB, and you can say, oh, no, we want the framing, sorry. And let's take out the insulation just for now. You can see there's this gap here, and I actually do a 1/4 inch gap between the finished interior wall and our ceiling. And then our ceiling continues all the way across, and then we leave a 1/4 inch gap here so that there's backer rod and acoustic sealant against our masonry wall over here. And what this does is it creates a fire stop so that fire can't go up here, but it also acts as an extra barrier for sound, because we're literally making our ceiling go all the way across the entire ceiling, all the way to the exterior walls, not just to the interior walls, so that sound can't seep through from the ceiling down into between our walls, which we don't want that either. So I like this design a lot better. And then we can put in the backer rod and acoustic sealant in there, and you can see how that sort of fits on top of our drywall layers and the OSB, and then it's all finished out like that. So that is how it works. And in this case, you know, we had a truss assembly, so we got our open web trusses, and we fill those all with pink insulation. Again, no rock wool on our job sites. We don't really need them unless we are building acoustic panels or we want to create some sort of fire blocking. But otherwise, we're trying to save you money by using regular insulation. And then we've got what's being hidden here is the HVAC system. So with our HVAC system, we've got our baffle boxes, and let's just kind of jump right into them because we got them right here. So our baffle boxes, I'm going to take away the ceiling insulation. So let's just get rid of that so you guys can see more clearly. This is a really cool system. Honestly, you guys can steal this. It's my design, and I'm using these AC Infinity fans, which are kind of used for growing weed, to be honest, growing, you know, all sorts of plants indoors. And we're pulling air from the inside of one part of the house, this playroom area. It's coming through a duct silencer, also sold by AC Infinity, so you don't hear the fan in this room. And then it goes through here, and then it changes to a larger duct, 8 inches around, which I designed to increase the airflow. And then we come into our baffle box, and let me just show you guys the baffle box real quick. That'll just show you inside of our baffle box. So the air comes in, it hits this baffle, it swerves around. These have all been sized perfectly to get the proper CFM flow, and then it comes down through here. This is actually a mistake that I'm noticing I have to fix, but technically you should not have your furring channel going through your opening there, so we'll have to move that. But basically, this air then goes down through all our layers of drywall and plywood and everything, and then goes through a vent and into the studio. So pretty straightforward for the most part. We build our baffle boxes out of this Echo Verb liner. This is only 1/2 inch because it's a pretty small box, and I want to not restrict the airflow too much. So it's a balance of that and getting absorption. Then we got 3/4 inch and then 5/8 inch drywall after that, and that's going to help isolate sound from getting in and out of our box. Now on the other side, we have in the reverse section over here, we are just going the other way. So air comes out of this, and then it goes through our vent, and then it goes around here and around over here and comes back and is pulled by this AC Infinity fan over here, and then through the duct silencer and into the pantry where it will be distributed within the house. Now this client didn't want to use an ERV, didn't want to have penetrations to the outside, so this is the next best solution. In some ways it's actually a better solution. It's not like perfectly fresh air, but it's certainly more fresh than the tiny little box that we've sealed up in here. So he needs some fresh air when he's playing that saxophone. So yeah, this is pretty much it. We had some extra blocking here for the, the clips that will be going on there. And overall, it's looking that's pretty much the gist of the design on that side. Now let's take a look at this wall here, which is unique. We switched to a single 2x6 wall here. Well, actually, before I jump into the 2x6 wall, let me talk a little bit about these clips and channels. So we've got the Genie clip RSTs here. So you can see an example of them here. We modeled them in SketchUp so you can see them. They attach to the 7/8 inch furring channel, and that then we screw our plywood layer and our drywall layers underneath there. We can actually fly through, and you'll see you've got, let's see, I go through each layer. We got drywall, and then plywood, and then we're in. So kind of a little traveling through our layers there. And all of that is screwed into the furring channel here, so that this then decouples everything, because the rubber here decouples this all from the exterior open web trusses. So, and then of course you always need insulation. So we put insulation in there as well. So that's basically how our ceiling layer is created. Now I wanted to show that, and then let's take the ceiling off. And I want to show you guys now this wall here. So we've got our ISOStore HD door here on the inside, and then the client really wants their own sleek door right here. So we modeled that in as well. This is not a soundproof specific door, but it's certainly going to add sound to the sound isolation with our HD LF door on the inside. Now, if we look at this wall here, this is the 2x6 wall. So we'll take a look at our 2x6 wall here and open up this guy, and we can look at taking off the 5/8 inch drywall, OSB. And you'll notice, and I'm just going to take away the door for a second just to make this easier to see. And we'll just open that up, and I'm actually going to take the HVAC out. So there we go. And then might as well take the piano out. We don't really need that stuff there. And, the desk, I don't know. We'll keep the desk in for now. So anyways, you can see here that we've got the hat channels on our wall as well, with the genie clips attaching to this wall. Now the reason for that is because this wall is in fact attached to the rest of the structure, both through the slab and through the ceiling. So we don't want to have vibrations or sound come through this wall and enter into our room. So we can't just put a bunch of layers of drywall on here. That wouldn't work. So we use our genie clip system and our 7/8 inch furring channel to bump that wall out on just one side. A lot of people think you got to do both sides. I think it's kind of a waste of money. You can just do 3 layers of drywall on this side, because we really wanted to make sure this wall was extra strong, and we did 3 layers on this inside wall, OSB, and then 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall. Because this is a metal stud system, we built a custom wood doorway to make sure everything worked, and to attach our heavy doors in with the wood rather than the metal. Double king studs always in our designs, and big 2x10 header. And yeah, that's pretty standard for what we like to do. And then the same thing, the drywall layers and the OSB layers will be attached directly to just the furring channel, not to any of the studs of the wall. And of course, insulation must go in there as well, but it doesn't have to be expensive insulation. It just has to be fluffy, good old fiberglass batt insulation. So yeah. And then acoustic sealant around all the edges. Another cool thing we did is these walls that normally would intersect, we actually built them in front of the drywall, which is a little trick that contractors probably don't like because it's not normal, but that's actually going to increase isolation because this is a continuous layer of drywall all the way across our isolation there. Alrighty, everybody. So that's kind of the idea, always building on a concrete slab. So let's talk about that. We just got to really we don't float any floors on a concrete slab. So flooring is standard, usually laminate, engineered hardwood, or hardwoods if you really want to do it fancy, with just a typical moisture underlayment down there as well that you can see. This door is actually not a soundproofed isolation door. We don't really care about the sound of the sax going outside. So this is rare that I do this, but I actually told the client, all right, we'll just do the one door here. It's not the end of the world. We really just didn't want the sax coming in this direction. Now, there's still a chance that the sound could come through this door, come up and into a window or something around the corner here. So if that does become a problem, they can always add a new door in this doorway, and it's not the end of the world. This is possibilities for future expansion, but I always say let's not fix a problem that we don't have yet. So let's talk about the acoustics now. This is really kind of one of my more exciting. One of the acoustic plans I like more. I just like the look of this room. Let me kind of get everything back in here in terms of our floor system and just get it looking like a final room. And let's put the door in. Why not? Okay, cool. So, we always put in our custom acoustic clouds, and the lighting is, as you can see here, we've got our disc lights in the clouds, and we always do that because we don't want to put big holes in our ceiling that we've worked so hard to isolate. So we're just running Romex straight down into the cloud. And we even have backlighting, which you can kind of see. This represents the backlighting in our acoustic clouds. That's going to be really nice for the client. So the acoustic clouds are really important for reducing the axial modes from floor to ceiling. So we always like to put those in. And then what we have is just a more non-traditional design. Put these guys on the front, both for aesthetic reasons, but also to help with some of the axial modes going front to back here. And I pushed them out a little bit to have some backlighting on them so that they'll kind of glow. That'll also help with the absorption in them. And they'll have a little bit of diffusion, but also offer a little bit of a cool look there. We've got some bass traps in this corner. Couldn't really fit a bass trap in this corner because of this bump out, which happens a lot. We got a reflection free zone here as best as we could. You know, they could add one on the door, but I just didn't like the aesthetics of that. And then we're starting to get our diffusion as you move back in the room. And I wanted to use polycylindrical diffusion. These are from GIK Acoustics because polycylindrical diffusion works really well in a small space. We started out with quadratic diffusion here, but then I decided it was too small and we wouldn't get the right diffusion, and that can actually make the room sound worse in certain places. So we ended up keeping it with polycylindrical, and then this 2D diffusion where we just have slat diffusion right here, which will also make it so you can stand closer to these panels and still get a lot of good sound out of them, unlike the quadratic diffusers. Again, we've got this panel here, bass traps in the corners, which I always feel bass traps do the most bang for your buck, so I'll start with them first. And if you look at this, you're wondering why doesn't it go all the way to the top? Well, that's because there's a mini split there. So if we put the mini split back in, you can see that part of the design. And this one also has that, full piano that we had before right there, and we can put the sax back in. So you can see how this whole room, even though it's small, it's going to sound really good and focused and contained with all that acoustic treatment, but it's not going to sound too dead. If we did all absorption in this room, it would sound very lifeless, and for a saxophone player, that's not what you want at all. Instead, now he's going to get all this absorption and diffusion in one place, and it's really going to make the room sound much livelier and hopefully, ideally, bigger than it actually is. The one thing we have going for us in this room are really high ceilings at about 9.5 feet, but even with that, we want to make sure that we can just open up this space as much as possible so that he can play sax, relax, and do this at any time of the night without bothering the rest of his family. All right. So I hope you have enjoyed this walkthrough of another one of our clients. This one was really unique and different, and I'm excited that you got to see the behind the scenes of it. If you are on this journey of trying to design your own recording studio and you like what you saw in our SketchUp files and you're interested in getting a full set of plans or just talking to me more about your own project and going in that direction, definitely sign up for a free Soundproof Clarity call. Just go to soundproofyourstudio.com and click the link that says I want to get a set of construction plans, and you can book a 30-minute call with me on my calendar. If you're not quite ready to jump in with that, or you're a little bit more on the DIY stage right now, it's totally fair. I was that person too many years ago. I have created a resource for you as well. This is my free soundproofing workshop. It's 30 minutes of in-depth teaching going over everything you need to know to learn about how to design your own soundproof room. And to watch that, you can just go to soundproofyourstudio.com/workshop. That is soundproofyourstudio.com/workshop. I'm Wilson Harwood. I am a studio designer and acoustician based in Nashville, Tennessee, and I look forward to seeing you all next week with more information on soundproofing and room acoustics. All right, see you guys later.